Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order, and there are numerous changes to things. First, I have a statement I want to make before we get too far along, but also 9.5, we need to do in camera because there's some other correspondence related to that we need legal advice on, and then we'll come over the camera after that and make a decision on 9.5.
Yes.
Also have to add in camera a personnel and contract matter. 11.2, I have to move to the top because Olivia has to go and do something else. And she told me if we want to deal with 11.2, we got to do it right away. And I think that's it for me for changes. Anybody else have any? There's quite a bit on the agenda as is, so hopefully nobody has anything to do, but if they do, they do.
There were a few things on the desk.
Yeah, they're all part of what I just tried to say.
Oh, except for the first one, it's for
Correspondence, marriage call. Yes, that's it.
10.3.
Mark it down is right after 10.3.
No, 10.3, you have an email from the lawyer. The agenda.
Scott, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Okay. I'd just like to take a minute to thank staff who were involved in the response to the past weekend storm. While we knew that there was going to be significant rainfall with some thunder and lightning, the extent of the storm was certainly not what we thought. We had widespread damage and impacts that we have not experienced in many years. The assessment of damages, cleanup, restoration of our infrastructure, especially our trails, will take some time. Throughout all of this, you continue to work tirelessly, putting in extra hours and overcoming obstacles with determination. We had staff who were responding to many issues we faced in our communities. They were also helping with our regional emergency management organization, as they have had to activate twice since Saturday to evacuate communities and to help to escalate some of the more significant issues we faced. Many staff spent the weekend in the Emergency Operations Center or by their phones and computers doing their very best to respond to emerging concerns, trying to evaluate issues despite the fast changing circumstances, and communicating with the public information that seemed to be changing by the minute. Our recreation staff were immediately out after the storm to assess trail damages and were quick to close the trails to ensure the safety of our residents. Public Works were out in the midst of the storm into the early hours of the morning on Friday, back out again first thing Saturday morning and Sunday, working to keep up with the large amounts of water that was inundating our wastewater treatment system, responding to outages and floodings and washouts. Kaiser Meadow staff worked long hours on the road damage and all the impacts there, including flooding basements, all while making sure the landfill site remained in operation. Our communication staff worked tirelessly all weekend to make sure the most accurate and current information was passed along. Even when this was challenging due to the large volume of calls, the urgency of some of the situations, and the unprecedented amount of washouts, road closures, information certainly was changing fast. I want to recognize the dedication, organized response of our staff and the entire remote organization. They demonstrated true spirit of professionalism and commitment to our communities. Their efforts in ensuring the safety of our residents not going unnoticed. And there's a lot more you can say. I mean, I think that to a large extent, I know I shouldn't say this, but I will. To a large extent, the public was understanding and knew that it was overwhelming. But they certainly had to deal with some people who didn't understand it. And that's a challenge for them, and they shouldn't have had to. But I will say that for the most part, the public understands that this is a difficult situation and it's going to take time. And everybody wants to be a priority, but not everybody can be. And we're doing our best. And I thank staff for doing that.
Well,
Well, I agree.
Very good job. Appreciated the information. I know myself, the updates, and I know for a fact along all those things that Gary were doing other things that probably should have waited, but you appreciate what you did. Thank you. All
They put in a lot of time.
Above beyond.
Okay, public input is I'm aware there is none. We have the minutes of the previous meetings, canceled July 13th, errors or omissions. Oh, and then I'm right on to you, yeah, forgot.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Public hearing minutes,
Motion to approve.
Second.
discussion, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Olivia, 11.2.
Good morning. Thanks for your accommodation. So staff has previously received direction to bring this RFP forward to retain a commercial real estate professional to further sales at Kaiser Meadow Industrial Park. For background, there's ample land available for development with the approximate phasing on page 3 of the RFP. The successful proponent of the RFP will provide services like comparative market analysis, negotiations, and guidance, among other services listed on pages 3 and 4 of the RFP. Additionally, the rated criteria and evaluation method for submissions by qualified entities is also noted on page 4. By hiring a commercial real estate professional, we can bridge an identified gap in our marketing as prospective buyers tend to go directly to commercial realtors to find property. Additionally, the successful proponent can field requests, are more knowledgeable in relation to the commercial real estate market, and are paid by commission, thereby incentivizing land sales without upfront cost MOC. Staff's recommended motion is option 3, direct staff to issue draft RFP particulars within a request for proposals for the professional services of commercial real estate broker to facilitate further land sales, marketing, and general awareness of available land at Kaiser Meadow Industrial Park without amendments. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions, people?
Well, if you want to sell stuff, you gotta advertise.
Somebody want to prepare to move accept the recommendation?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion, all those in favor? Motion carried. There you go, go golfing. What golf tournament?
It's for the OHC
Oh,
in memory of Don Monroe.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, proclamations, right to know week. Information Privacy Commission of Nova Scotia requesting county participate in the right to know week. Do we have a problem? Do we want to make that claim that in normal fashion?
We do, I would move that we approve the proclamation.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. 7.1, are we on to that?
6 point. Sorry.
That depends on who's,
Parks and Recreation Committee.
Say my name.
I don't know. It says 6.1.
6.1, okay, it's not on my agenda. It's on you. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's on your desk, so somehow I didn't get that in.
It says, yeah, it's in the updated agenda. You probably have it.
I have an old copy, I do not have it on my agenda.
1.
Okay, recommendation for approval cast from Recreation and Parks. Nobody here, is there? Well,
No, that's to, I can speak on that. I was at the meeting. It's just to approve a small grant to a student who's going to the National Youth Track and Field Championship. And for $240, so they fundraise the rest. It was very small amount, so we approved $240. I'd make that recommendation that we approve that motion 2023-345.
okay, discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion carried. Now I'm on to 7.1, or am I not?
6.3, right?
Yeah, it was numbered wrong on the desk. It's 6.1.
6.3.
Yeah.
So this equipment, 7.1, their equipment is at 9:15, so we can move on to 8.1.
Okay, doesn't say that. Okay, 8.1 then. Request for decision, financial information services amendment to tax exemption policy.
Slow down. Slow down. Love it. Fine. We want to get out of here.
All right, good morning,
Come
council.
again.
Hello, it's been a while.
Last time I looked up, you were there, a couple of days ago.
Just last week, what's happened since then? Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. It feels like a lot longer than a week ago since last time I was sitting here in front of you guys.
I
Anyway,
was telling him yesterday, you better start working on an amended budget. There's a lot of stuff that's happened since we passed that.
let's get through the summer first. Maybe
Yeah.
September, I'll bring you something about
See
that.
what we can do for everybody else.
At least some capital updates. Anyway, so what I have for you today, or for this instance of my sitting here with you today, is an update, the annual update to policy P25. That's the tax exemptions for low-income property owners. So as you're aware, this is generally an annual process where we adjust the income levels and the exemption maximum amounts. Last year, I brought to you a little more in-depth revisions to the policy where we adjusted the benchmarks that we use. So rather than using just a flat CPI adjustment, we're now using the benchmark for income as the average weekly earnings in Nova Scotia, the change year over year for that. And for the maximum exemption, we're using a benchmark of the change in, so the combination of the PVSC tax cap, assessment cap, and the change in solid waste and residential tax rates, so that it's more closely aligned with the measures that we're adjusting. So that's what I'm bringing to you this morning, is a recommendation to adjust the income thresholds upwards by 4.1% to align with the year over year adjusted change in weekly earnings for Nova Scotians, and to adjust the exemption amounts upwards by 6.4%, which is the combined impact of the 7.7% PVSC cap on assessed values and the slightly reduced residential tax rate, because you approved a reduced rate. So those combine to a 6.4% increase in that. So the budget for the low income tax exemption this year was passed at $122,100. Based on the experience we've had in the past years, last year's exemptions totaled only $98,284, which was lower than I would have expected with the changes we made, but it shows me that we have certainly budgeted sufficiently. We're not trying to change the budget, just looking for approval to adjust those income thresholds and the exemption maximums. And I've included the changes in wording for the policy here, and basically what you would have expected to see annually. So if there are any questions about anything here, I'm happy to answer them.
I have one.
Yeah.
So the minimum amount of the 17,092, does that fall in line with someone that just gets old age pension, for instance, and the supplement?
So I believe the old age pension supplement, and if you were maxing your CPP, you would be somewhere in the $20,000 range. So those people would still be within the policy here, but not at the maximum exemption amount.
I was just thinking no CP, but a lot of people just live on the
Oh,
old
yes.
age.
Yeah, just OAS and the
And the
GI.
supplement that they
Yeah,
get.
that would certainly be below the 17. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head here, but.
That's all.
Okay, somebody prepared to move, we accept the recommendations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Yeah.
Opposed, motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm on 9.1, request for decision for certain operation purchase of 3/4 ton service vehicle for Kaiser Met.
Morning. Okay, this one's relatively straightforward.
There was trouble.
We're looking for approval to purchase the 3/4 ton diesel truck from So Shore Chev. This is part of our equipment budget that we have for the landfill. It's been budgeted
Part of our budget, as I just said. We use this truck for completing all our winter maintenance plowing, so it's just gonna replace the former plow truck, the older one. We had 2 submissions, so Shore Shed came in at the lower option, so that is the one that we're recommending. And it's, yeah, so that one's fairly straightforward, so we would like to proceed
That's the
with
lower
purchase.
Is it a lesser vehicle? Are they equivalent
It's a
vehicles?
shed.
That's why I was asking.
Well, they both meet the requirements of
They do, yeah. We went through all that, Tammy's done that work for us, so we appreciate that, so that's all we've gone
So
through.
what was the other one? I know the price, but what kind of vehicle is this?
Ford.
somebody prepared to move, we accept it.
So moved.
Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion's carried. 9.2,
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that one will be even faster, but sometimes you're quick, Alan.
never know.
This is for the, thanks, Tammy. This is for the mobile EVC unit. Our original EVC unit has reached its end of life. We need to maintain at least 2 in operation to handle our leachate processing. I can't talk this morning.
Those are ones that squirted up near.
Yeah, they're actually like a snow gun. But we
Yeah,
use them for- yeah, so they're part of our environmental permit. This was not included in our 2023-24 budget, but right now replacement is recommended. This one, former one, has lasted like 5 years, which is pretty good under the harsh conditions of the leachate. So this second unit, our second unit remains operable, but we should replace that one in a few years because it's only a few years behind. So I'm estimating 5 years per unit. Due to the potential for a long delivery time, we'd like to proceed with the purchase right now. This technology, as I said, is part of our permit. We would like to go with the same model. So we are recommending alternative procurement circumstances to ensure the compatibility with existing products. Plus, we can use the extra parts and things off the other one.
So we're just looking at this moment to go find out what price.
We have the price, we're ready to purchase. I just need it added to the budget and approved by council. It's 55,000 plus HST, and it will come from our operating revenue, which is outlined in the report.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if I can just add, so Krista, the one that's there now, so when will you use those until they're, until they come, you'll be on the ball to replace it where you're going,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. And one right now is down because we're
Okay.
having trouble sourcing parts. So the sooner we can order this one and have it and be up to par, the better for us.
We have to meet our environmental regulations.
Motion to approve
Yeah.
the purchase of that's the truck.
So we request that council authorize the purchase of a new mobile EVC unit.
Yeah. So that's the motion.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion is carried.
Thank you. One more I'll mumble through. This will be for sandblasting and painting of our public drop-off and hazardous waste depot on site. Currently, they do need sandblasting and painting of the trusses to maintain structural integrity and for aesthetic purposes. I've included some photos in the report, so it's quite easy to see. We had gotten some quotes a few years back, and council may remember that I had requested budget to do this work. It got delayed over the years due to COVID and due to just priorities. So right now, because it's up over the current threshold, we have to do a tender process. So I would like to be able to get this work done as soon as possible. It's not part of our budget for this year. It didn't get carried through. That's on me. So we would like to do that to maintain it. So the options that we had there was 2 different options. The one option wouldn't last as long as this option. This one will last 10 times longer, so it's cost a little bit more. It just seems to make more sense. The other option was just chemically high pressure, clean the trusses to remove the rust and add the epoxy, but it makes more sense to pay a little more to make it last longer. And the photos are there. I would recommend the budget from operating for this one. It's about 100,000 approximately, plus HST is the range, which I think it'll come in because of previous quotes. So we would like to request that council approve a budget amendment of $100,000 and authorize staff to tender the sandblasting painting of the drop off and has waste depot for the landfill. I can bring back that.
So we won't,
Yeah.
we won't end up with as much in reserves or capital reserve.
Yeah. And we'll bring it back for award.
So. Questions?
Is this shared with our partners?
Yes, it's awesome.
So that, do they know, I guess, are they? We're,
Oh, wait, this is the top drop off. I'm not sure.
This is
if
the
that's
public.
part of the budget or not. It is part of what year.
It's our operating.
Oh, it's still part.
If you've heard of that.
We'll meet with them, but next week,
they got
we get.
this question, do they need to help approve this too, or
No, they do not.
I'll make a motion to approve all of them.
Second,
A second.
discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried.
Thank you.
You did pretty good this morning.
Sorry.
Oh, well, yeah. Stop. Okay, 9.4, community development recreation strategic priorities. What? Oh, the presentation, well, that clock doesn't tell me to score
It's
that.
9:08.
Okay, we'll do that.
Clock's off a little bit,
Okay.
so it's 9:08, and I think they're on,
Yeah.
on the meeting, so I think they're ready if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Sorry, George.
Surprised you read it already. It's on a roll this morning.
You need to do battery.
So. Well, I thought, yeah, the power is probably flipped on and off.
Simon, are you there?
Hey everyone, yep, I'm here.
All right,
What number is this, guys?
7.1.
Yes, I can introduce this before Simon jumps in. So Simon Webb is one of the project managers from Deloitte who helped us with this project. This is our business retention and expansion project. What Simon's going to walk through today is the data from the actual survey that was done with 100 businesses in the Municipality of Chester. So he'll walk through that presentation. That was done in the fall. In the winter, we did a focus group. And then in the spring, we had the action plan, a draft action plan as a result of this information that will be brought back to council for discussion. So that's why there's a bit of a delay in seeing the data. But Simon, I'll throw it over to you.
Great, thank you. I'll share my screen here. Okay. Okay, good morning, Mr. Warden and members of council. I have the privilege today of presenting the Municipality of Chester's findings on the Deloitte Signature Triage Business Retention and Expansion Survey. So my team at Deloitte, we're part of the Economic and Policy Advisory, and we conduct market research in municipalities all across Canada. The triage is really, dare I say, one of my favorite of our survey instruments, because it really quickly and efficiently delivers a huge amount of insight in a way that's respectful of your business community's time. And it's also respectful of municipal budgets as well. Another reason that I like it is because it was designed by economic development professionals, members of our team, who really understand how time-consuming business retention and expansion interviews can be for an economic development office. It takes what's usually a large business directory and prioritizes businesses based on which ones need support kind of in the shorter term or in most need of support. So it makes your ECDev office, their time more efficient in terms of business retention and expansion interviewing. So we conducted this survey using a random sample of telephone and online surveys with 100 businesses within the municipality. This resulted in a total response rate of 30.2%, which is really high in the market research industry. And what it means is that our modes of communicating with businesses were effective, and also that your business community was highly engaged, which is always really great to see. Also, the average phone interview length was 16.4 minutes. So we designed the survey to be respectful of businesses' time. We all know that businesses are extremely busy in the modern day, so we keep that in mind when we're designing the questionnaire. We call our approach scientific. The key here is the random sampling of businesses within the directory. So within your directory, we'll randomly reach out to businesses. And what that does is since each business has an equal probability of being selected to be contacted about the survey, it creates a nice cross-section basically of businesses within your business community. So when we say that there's a 9.8% margin of error at 95% confidence level, in plain English, what that means is we expect the results to be highly accurate to the business community as a whole. So I'm going to talk through some high-level findings from the business survey. As Ms. Lowe mentioned, we also completed a focus group and provided some draft actions, which we're not going to cover today. Those are with your staff, but we'll talk through some of the perceptions that came from this business survey itself. So first, we wanted to confirm that some priority sectors were included within our sampling, and they were, including construction, business services, arts, culture, and recreation, niche and value-added manufacturing, as well as a few green industry, and also some, of course, within the wider industries like retail, automotive repair, hospitality, and food industry. Now, businesses within the municipality were predominantly locally owned and operated, but there was also a handful of externally owned and operated businesses. There's quite a few long-standing businesses within the municipality, which is always great to see. We also identified some that were startups within the past year. And we were able to get a nice mix of business sizes. So there were some sole proprietors, as well as small, medium, and large employers as well. 20% of the businesses were renting their business property. And we asked them the term of their lease if they were renting. We also flagged within our data set if the business lease was coming up for expiry within the next year. So we assign these a red flag, and the triage analogy, which is kind of from the medical analogy where we're prioritizing businesses. Those are businesses we would recommend following up with in the shorter term in case they need help finding a new lease or negotiating their current one. Within the municipality of Chester, a lot of businesses conducted most of their sales within the municipality. But of course, many of them conducted some of their sales within the HRM, within Lunenburg, or elsewhere within the province. Business performance, so this is where some of the really interesting stuff comes out. The top two graphs there are looking at employment in the municipality. So in the top one, 22% of businesses had reported an increase in their number of employees over the past 12 months. That's compared to 14% who reported a decrease. So what we're showing there is a net increase in employment among businesses with that metric. Looking forward, the results were even more optimistic there. So 39% of businesses were expecting to increase their number of employees in the next 12 months, compared to only 2% that were expecting a decrease. So really that's indicating that there's going to be some demand for workers and some hiring going on.
You may get to it later, but are they experiencing difficulty in finding those new employees they need?
Yes, so that does come in some factors later. There's definitely there seems to be some difficulties. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but great point. So the bottom graph there shows attitudes. So over the past 12 months, 20% of businesses had said their attitude was more positive compared to 12 months ago, 8% more negative. So that's a net positive of 12%, which is a really good score for that compared to what we've seen in municipalities across the country. This one here, so it's similar graphs, but we're looking at revenues and really positive things coming out here. So over the past 12 months, 46% of businesses had reported an increase in their revenues compared to 21% that reported a decrease. So even though there is a net increase in revenues, potentially that 21%, there's some businesses you may follow up with there to help out. But really optimistic again, looking forward, 54% expecting higher revenues in the next 12 months compared to 9% expecting lower. So we take those 5 trend metrics that I just showed you and we create what's called a business performance forecast. And really what this is, it gives you a sense of, given the year we've come from and where we're going, what at this point in time, kind of what the trajectory is of the business community. Are you more of in an expanding environment or a contracting? And you can see from the graph here that the Municipality of Chester is very much in an expanding type of environment where you're expecting more employees and more revenues and attitudes are improving. We typically see these between 0 and 3 kind of on average. So this is really a positive result. Definitely something to celebrate there.
Yeah. Might want to start the store back.
So 84% of businesses agreed that they would recommend the municipality to another business looking to expand or relocate. That's again quite a high metric, and it's something that a lot of our clients use for business attraction efforts. It's a good metric that you can show to other businesses and say businesses here are really they would recommend from a business sense. We use that metric to create what's called a net promoter score. So if a business strongly agreed they would recommend the region as a place to do business, we would call those active proponents of the community. If somebody asked them, they might express a positive opinion. Detractors are people who somewhat or strongly disagree. They might, if somebody asked them, they might voice a negative opinion that might harm branding efforts. And net promoter score is the number of promoters minus the number of detractors. So here you're in the positive 17%, which is really good. And this metric is notoriously hard to get in the positive on. So just the way it's constructed. So a really positive result there. A key performance indicator. So overall, how satisfied are you with the Municipality of Chester as a place to own and operate a business? So 87% of businesses were satisfied, which is just really a good, strong result to start with. The reason we call this a key performance indicator is because this is one we recommend you monitor over time and try to build upon in future iterations of this. In an ideal world, you would have everybody satisfied owning and operating a business in your region. Now we don't live in a utopia, but this is kind of a metric that you're trying to maximize as much as possible. And we try to give you some clues with some of the analysis after this of how to improve upon that. We ask satisfaction levels with specific business factors to get a bit more granular. And here's some of the metrics that I was mentioning in the question earlier. So this is the satisfaction rate. So the percent of people who are very satisfied or somewhat satisfied. Some of the top performing ones were ability of the municipality to attract tourists, zoning for people or businesses familiar with that, municipal marketing efforts to advertise the region. And some of the ones with the most room for improvement were availability of adequate housing, skilled labor and unskilled labor, as well as the availability of health and medical services.
Scan our stuff.
We take this analysis a step further, and we do what's called the derived importance analysis. So for each of those business factors, we actually do a statistical analysis that it estimates for that factor, how much does it drive a business's overall satisfaction? So in the fictional example here to the right, it's not based on data. The development and building permit process, as businesses get more and less satisfied with that factor, you can see the KPI goes up and down a huge amount. For cell phone service, a similar change doesn't have as big an impact in their overall satisfaction with the region. So what this gives you is which factors, if you're able to make improvements to them, what we would expect would make a big improvement in their overall satisfaction. We use that metric along with the performance or the satisfaction levels to create the priority matrix. So we prioritize factors that have the most room for improvement in their satisfaction and their highest level of importance. So if you're able to make improvements to them, you'd expect an improvement in your KPI. So some of the ones that rose to the top there were availability of adequate housing, availability of skilled labor, availability of funding programs for business and property improvement in the development and building permit process, as well as the availability of warehouse space there. We also wanted to draw here, so a similar survey was conducted in both of your neighboring municipalities within Queens and the municipality of the District of Lunenburg. Something I wanted to highlight here, these are the top priorities from each of those municipalities. There are some similarities there. So definitely availability of adequate housing. Labor is a theme throughout the municipalities. Even the availability of funding programs for business and property improvement is up there in most of them. So a lot of these factors, especially labor and housing, are not necessarily within the municipal purview, but you are seeing similar difficulties within your neighboring municipalities. So there's potential for regional collaboration on those types of issues. We also create what's called a business community health index. So this we were getting a lot of requests to compare results across communities since we've done this in so many communities across Canada. So what we did is we created one index that's made up of 9 subscores of the key questions that we ask across all of our triage clients. So the Municipality of Chester was really basically on par with the national 5-year average, just a little bit shy, but it really wouldn't be a statistically significant difference, but room to keep building on there. What I want to flag here is that each of those green bars there is an individual business. So we create this at the business level as well. It's a really good score for potential follow-up as well, because a business may be high on one particular metric, but if they're high on this index, they would have to be consistently high across all 9 of the scores. So the businesses at the top there are doing extremely well, and they're probably really good candidates for case studies or testimonials to help attraction efforts. Ones at the bottom are probably in need of some support or outreach in your follow-ups. The box over to the right shows, we actually break it down by a subscore and show which ones are kind of higher or lower than the national average relatively. So you're higher than the national average on historical and expected revenue changes, changing attitudes, and businesses' future plans. So really most of those trend metrics, you outperformed the national average. Some of the ones that were relatively lower were some of the business factors related to workforce attraction and retention, as well as infrastructure and amenities, so sort of that hard infrastructure type ratings. We ask businesses their future plans within the next 12 months, and this is a key question for our triage flags. So businesses with plans to expand, we identified 26 of those. We assigned them green triage flags, so potential businesses to follow up on to help them with their expansion plans and help make sure that it's within the municipality if possible. The other 4 triggered red triage flags, so 4 businesses with plans to downsize, 4 to relocate, 1 to close, and 2 to sell. So those are red flags as potentially businesses to help see what you can do for them.
We know the identity of all these businesses. Okay, yeah, I just, yeah.
And these businesses were the target of some of the follow-up interviews that were conducted already. So yeah, but we provide the data with as long as the business provided their consent to provide their contact information, you do have their responses there that you can identify them. We asked businesses if they had correspondence with various levels of government in the past 12 months. So you can see 59% had some kind of correspondence with local municipal staff, 42 with elected officials, 11 with the Economic Development Department in the past 12 months, and 30 having said none of the above. That's about it for the high-level results from the survey. As I mentioned, there was some follow-up focus groups and an action plan provided for some of these priorities we identified. Before I go to questions there, I just wanted to, on behalf of my team, just really thank the economic development team. It's really been a pleasure working with them on this. It's clear they're dedicated and passionate about economic development in the municipality. And always really great to see a really engaged business community. It's not a given, definitely, in communities where we're working with that. So with that, I'll ask if there's any questions.
No, I don't have any questions, but I mean, it's generally speaking quite positive. And, you know, and I think that having identified those businesses that want to expand, those that are going to close, that are going to sell, I mean, that's good information and gives staff what they need to go and find out what the problem is or how they can help and all that. So, yeah, but it seemed quite positive to me. I mean, some of the issues like housing and staffing, I mean, those are sort of commonplace across the country. Well, I'm not shocked at that. Yeah, Derek, you.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? I mean, well, what's the next step?
Yeah, so we have an action plan drafted and we're gonna bring that back to council for discussion. Finalized based on the top priorities. So that's the important, what I loved about what Deloitte did in terms of the data analysis is that they didn't just look at satisfaction levels, they actually prioritized them. So that's what our action plan will be based on, is those top priorities identified.
And when will that come back?
September.
It's in the calendar, the agenda plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on the agenda for
Later on.
coming out here. Later on. So,
I don't have the screen open. So.
okay.
Anyway,
She's developing on the fact of an action plan. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Just to really reiterate what you said, it's positive, so it's reassuring. Absolutely, 100%. And also too, when I look at those areas of concern and the commonalities between modal and Queens, if you will, and some of those top criteria, critical fact identified issues and so on. For me, it allows me to take some of that information and populate other projects that we might be working on, like housing. So certainly it's all melding and coming together. So it just, and similar to when Chad and Gord come up with the next, with the recreation and strategic priorities and the collaboration. So really, this meeting today for me is just not just what's on the agenda in terms of the identified subject, but how it kind of overlays.
Yeah. We'll move forward. make it even better. Yes, Derek?
One thing that I was, I guess, surprised by was it's on page 14, 28, depending what number you use. We're talking about business, our business's communication. Elected officials were contacted by 42%. I assume that's us.
Yeah.
More so than the economic development department, or contacted by 11%.
Yeah.
So I think we need to have some discussion with economic development. So we get these contacts and we don't all have them. What should we be doing as elected officials?
Send it on to them.
A little deeper than that. We need to have information. I've been asked a number of times, what services do you provide at Kaiser Meadow for business wanting to locate there? I really don't have all that information. Service lots, no service lots, those are the questions they're asking me. But I don't have enough information to have an informed discussion. Yes, of course, I prefer them to Aaron or whoever's there. But at the same time, they want to know that your elected official knows something about this, and I think we need to have more information. I was amazed at 42% contacted elected officials.
Could that also maybe mean an MLA or an MP, not just council?
Could be, yeah. But we're part of the elected
Yeah,
officials, so whether,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta be honest, like, people call me with everything under the sun, right? And you can't walk into the grocery store or the gas station, it doesn't matter where you are, I mean, because they see you out there, you know, I don't have the answer to all that. That's why we have 7 or 8 different departments with expertise in those departments. I generally speaking will call somebody in one of those departments and ask them to give them a call to provide that information, because there's no way on earth that I know every detail of every department in the municipality of Chester.
no one expects you to know that.
Yeah.
And they don't expect it when they speak to us.
No, but I mean, they call, they just call us, I mean, they know us. They don't even know what department half the time to call.
That's my point there, I think you understand.
Yes, I do, yeah. Yeah, it might also help too for us to do more business events, like more outreach as a department, so that they can.
Engage with you in a
Exactly.
simpler
Yeah.
manner, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, that.
Well, it would be interesting to know, Simon's still there.
Yeah, it's still.
Still here, yeah.
42%, breakdown, that Sharon's question. Municipal officials, provincial officials, federal. Is there a breakdown of 42%? How many are contacting the municipal officials? Or council?
So yeah, through the chair here, we don't have a breakdown of that particular metric. Again, you can see that who has said yes to that within the data set, but we're not able to break it down with the data that we got.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Maybe you answered this, but you mentioned that the random sampling of 100 businesses that you contacted, so it's sort of scientific in that respect, and then 30 some odd responded. Was there any adjustment to see whether the 30% is also reflective of the overall? In other words, could the 30% all be bunched in, say, one sector, and another sector never bothered to answer at all?
Yeah, so one of the first slides Simon put up, it showed the percentage of the sector, because that was one of the questions we asked, what sector the interview was part of. So that one of the first slides breaks out the actual breakdown, and it's pretty representative, I think, of our concentration of businesses, yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, page 5.
Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, thank you very much. The information will be useful for us moving forward, so thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, you guys want to move on to 9.4, or do you want to have a break?
No, let's go.
Okay, we'll go to 9.4 first.
Let go or take long, I'll take over.
Yeah.
Take a break.
Good luck just before the break, right?
Oh, that's cool.
Trash.
You want to talk about that? Sure, that's another conversation for another day.
Yeah, the list of priorities in our strategic plan has been slightly modified. So just as a brief introduction to the report that Gord is presenting here. So council recalls that in our strategic priorities, we've had the active living strategy update that has been on there for a little while. And so it's time to do that update. And as well, there was some discussion within the Recreation Committee to update some strategic planning that hadn't been done in quite some time within the department, just to do some department prioritizing. So we were in a position that we didn't want to do multiple different priority setting within the department, and so we decided to combine that all into one strategic plan for the department. And so that's kind of what led us to undertake this work. And as well, so having Gord lead this work, and that's connected to the funding that we received from the province through the MPAL program, so the Municipal Physical Activity Leadership Program. And so as part of that work and that funding that we received from the provincial government for the funding of Gord's position is really connected to that physical activity piece, and ensuring that the municipality is putting efforts into trying to increase the physical activity levels of our residents. And so that's all connected to this work, and part of the reason why Gord has taken the lead on that. So anyways, just want to provide a little bit of that background, and so we've kind of kicked off this work with the Recreation Committee earlier this spring. And we've taken it through to a point where we now have a draft document ready. And so the idea today is to present it to you so you can all be aware of what's in there and to provide some input. And so we will be, we don't have a finalized document yet, so we're interested in council feedback. We're going to have an opportunity for the public to provide some input. So we're not doing an in-depth public and consultation phase, but we're going to be advertising in Explore Life and perhaps connecting with some of our partners to get some feedback before finalizing and getting to that final stage where we will bring it back to you for final approval. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Gordon.
I think the storm has helped us with the physical activity.
It perhaps has contributed. Yes.
Walk through, just drive, everybody's basement each way.
Yeah, we were joking the other day, one of the buzzwords that came out during the process is we wanted to be agile as a department. So I think they've been pretty agile the last 5 days.
Before we started, maybe it's gonna be in presentation, but you mentioned about advertising, because when I went through, I saw some of the gaps. You're gonna advertise in Explore Nova Scotia. So have you thought, sorry?
A recreation guide.
Explore Life, sorry.
It's okay.
But I'm thinking, are you gonna put like questionnaires in there for specific, just say, is there some sort of activity you would like to see in a certain area of the municipality? I'll just say for Western Shore, for example, in my district, that you can access, or things like that.
So we haven't intended to get to that level or to do what we weren't planning to do a full-blown public consultation or full-blown public survey. We are always open to that type of feedback, and I know we advertise on Explore Life, for example, our 8 feet to go, right? So if you get a group of people together and you want to have a program, just let us know and we'll take that feedback. So we're always open to that. So we're not specifically asking that question right now, but we're absolutely always open and interested on getting ideas from the public on what they'd like to see in that direct program element.
Yeah, so I think our intent right now is to share these ideas, share the background, share why we see these as priorities for the department to be more impactful in our work in the municipality, and then invite that feedback just on those ideas. You might recall it, years ago, or a couple times in my time here, the province has initiated a survey, an Ipsos Reid survey of physical activity levels in the municipality. So there is an opportunity on the horizon to maybe get a little bit more specific and to use their term granular when it comes down to like, what do people want in the communities where they live? They haven't committed to doing that again, but just know that that might be a possibility to get a little bit more of what you're thinking about. Great, okay. All right, and just to flag as well, I welcome comments from Sharon and Andre as well, who were members of the committee at different times as we went through this in the spring. So pipe up when you have a thought, folks. So just to set the background a little bit more for the work that we did, as Chad noted, some of our strategies and our big picture thinking have been a little bit outdated in our department. So we wanted to take on this challenge of figuring out what it is that we do and why we do it, kind of create a roadmap for the work that we do. And also, I think, create kind of I think we work really well as a staff together, understanding our priorities, but just putting them on paper is really key sometimes. And we've taken this opportunity to really step back and kind of hover above the work that we do to say, why is it we do this? Are we really being as impactful as we want to be? So when we got into this process with CMRC folks, what we wanted to do first was kind of set the context of the work that we do. And I included the working definition of recreation at the top of this report, just to remind all of us that even though I'm supposed to be a municipal physical activity leader, really recreation and the work we do is so much more than physical activity. It really encompasses every part of people's lives and how they can kind of find fulfillment in their communities as well. So we looked at that recreation. We also looked at all the kind of strategies that already inform the work that we do. And there's many of them at a national level and a provincial level and even municipal level. And as we put it to CMRC, like those things already are part of our DNA for what we do every day. But what we want to do now is reflect on that stuff and think about how we're going to use that in the future, especially in the changing world that we've just come through a couple of years of pandemic. The forces acting on us are a little bit different now. And this last week has even demonstrated, like, how do we work as a recreation department to serve our communities? And then the next part of this was kind of coming to an agreement on what it is that we're actually trying to do through this process. So big strategies, I'm not so much a fan of big strategies anymore. I'm more interested, and this is my personal opinion, I'm more interested in kind of laying out frameworks and again, understanding what it is that we do and why we do it, and then using those touch points as kind of decision, helping us make decisions and choosing actions into the future. So when we sat down with CMRC, we very explicitly said, we don't want you to tell us what to do on a daily basis. We want you to tell us what's important and where to work. So that was the agreement that we kind of came to with CMRC folks to kind of scope this out a little bit for ourselves. And then lastly, and that said, we also didn't want to just rely solely on staff to operationalize this. We want CMRC and by extension you folks as well to have some oversight or create some accountability for us. So I'll get back to that later, but that was part of the conversation that we had with CMRC. So that's the background and how we got here. The process then kind of went through the classical, vision and mission. But the thing I wanted to highlight there is that we didn't do a vision and mission for the entire municipality. We wanted to make it personal to the department. How are we going to act and how are we going to achieve the goals of this department? The premise being that if we do a good job internally, we'll be impactful in our communities. So we took all that and synthesized it down to the items that you see in this report. I'll walk through these fairly quickly. And then again, as Chad said, the purpose of this is inviting your feedback. Do you see the stuff that we've outlined here as being the right priorities, number one, the most impactful priorities, and will they actually get us to our goals? Is the question for you to contribute to today. So the vision is signaling our longer term goals. So the vision that we worked with CMRC on and came up with is our municipal recreation and park service is a passionate, innovative, and agile leader, there's that word again, in creating equitable recreation opportunities for our diverse communities so they may thrive physically, mentally, and spiritually. So making you cry already, Abdul? This is making you cry already? You're a little emotional about this?
Yeah, I did a bit. I'm emotional.
Back on track. And then our mission became to empower and enable everyone to find joy, fulfillment, health, and community through recreation. The point I'll make about a mission, and this is kind of the evolution of my thinking over the years as well, is that I started to think of that the mission is that thing that you write in Sharpie on the palm of your hand. So when you're in a conversation, you're trying to figure out why it is I'm doing this thing today, you can just refer to it and say, right, that's why I do this thing. So that is our mission of our department right now. And then I'm a big fan of guiding principles these days as well, because I learned this years ago. These are the things that we are responsible to on a daily basis as well. And everything that we do, every decision we make, every action we choose, every program that we develop should be checked against these guiding principles to make sure that we're being true to ourselves. And the way that we develop these is asking essentially two questions. First of CMRC folks and then of staff as well. if we brought a new hire into this department, what behaviors would be expected of that person? And conversely, what behaviors would not be tolerated? So perhaps when you read these guiding principles, you can see Debbie and Cosette particularly in some of the language that we use here, like human-centered service, and human-first service, and how we welcome people into our department and the work that we do. So that's the point of these guiding principles, to always check ourselves against these. I won't read through these. I'll trust that you've read through them in detail, but just again, to say that, just demonstrating our commitment to the work that we do on a daily basis, being welcoming and inclusive, not just in the office, but in the way that we create spaces for people to experience recreation, striving to be excellent and leaders in our field as well, working with our communities, with agencies and organizations that have similar recreation goals. And then lastly, being better at communication as well, not just for the sake of saying more stuff, but being more impactful with the communication that we do. I think we're good, but we can be better. And this is what this is calling us to do, is be better at some of the stuff that's important. So those are our guiding principles. And then those help create kind of the strategic priorities that we landed on. And again, these are the things that we want to be more impactful on in our communities. So the first one there, and I'll just flag that analogy that we've been using. So think of these as the buckets of our activities. We'll get down to our strategic actions in just a second. But if we attend to all these things, these are the areas that we think are most important and that will help us be most impactful. So leisure education and active living. So encouraging citizens to include recreation, physical activity in their daily lives. The key there is recreation and physical activity. Physical activity, as we've defined it, is kind of a subset of recreation. Including sharing the skills and wisdom needed for people to be active independent of our programmed offerings. So this is a conversation we often have, like we do lots of great programming, but we will not be reaching our goals if we're always relying on people coming to our programs, coming to our services. We want them to be independent of us, embracing recreation and active living in their lifestyles as well. But we can be kind of catalysts for that, we understand. Secondly, then, is communication, reach, and participation. So communication is a cornerstone of reaching more people. And then the premise there is if we reach more people, we'll be able to increase participation in the work that we do or the spaces that we have program. So that's priority number 2. Social justice and equity. So this is about removing barriers to participation, but especially in the last year or so, I'll just remind everyone that we've signed on to the Anti-Racism and Recreation Charter. So this is also not just about how we remove barriers, but how we as staff understand the barriers that people face. And that's a whole journey that we're on as well, internally, and as part of, to link this to the EDI committee work that's happening that you're spearheading. Collaboration is the 4th one there. So again, working with and supporting individuals and organizations and lending our expertise. So, there's been a few occasions in the last few days even where we've taken calls and we know of organizations that have been impacted by the storms. How can we lend what we do in our department to their success? That's what this is trying to get at. And then lastly, parks, trails, and open spaces. And facility shows up as one of the action areas. These are facilities, of course, but this was just reflective of the conversation that we had with CMRC, that in the last couple of years in particular, we put an emphasis on building those kinds of spaces, and they've been successful to date. There's more work to be done. By the way, the new trails held up pretty well in the storms. The rail trail certainly has a different impact on it. But then knowing that that's where some of the demand that we're seeing from our communities lies right now, putting some attention to that. So those are the priority areas. And then
I've got a question, and I'm almost scared to ask, but it's it comes up later on in the day. And it's just that I see recreation facilities per se are not on the list.
So sorry, finish your question, Alan.
Well, I mean, I just like, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but when we're talking about a rink or whatever, a gym or whatever it is, or basketball or whatever the case may be, it would be useful to me if I knew what it was the public found for their priorities and what we do or do not have.
that's not to jump ahead as well, but that's a beautiful springboard into what Church Memorial Park Board of Trustees was asking here on the at the table on June 29th.
Yeah, and like to me, you know, when you make major decisions like that, without knowing the numbers who use them, the distance to similar facilities within the county, things like that, then how do I know for sure what my priorities are when it comes to funding it, you know, like, and it's not only, but I mean, it would be useful in, you know, I mean, I know that we probably have more gymnasiums available to people than anybody else, because we have all of our community schools, but it's not, nobody's told me that we have more than most people, nor have they told me that we need them open more up, you know, or a basketball court or a swimming hole or whatever the case may be. So yeah, somewhere along the line, it's probably not too long from now, I need some of that information.
Yeah, so I don't think we're intentionally leaving facilities open, perhaps that enough attention maybe we need to include a specific priority area specific to facilities. I know there are other examples, like I know we also had, we talk a lot about pickleball. I mean, we had a group in the community that are interested in pickleball facilities, whether that's at our school or a different facility or outdoor facility or what have you. So there are lots of facility related.
Think of it this way as well, Alan, that, so facility shows up in the strategic action area.
Yeah, I see.
But facilities are a means to an end, as we've written this. So facilities are important. And I think and we were conscious of these kinds of questions as we were going through this. So that's why we chose the word to optimize the use of municipal partner recreation facilities. That also implies that maybe we're adding facilities or we're trying to get more people into facilities.
Or you don't need as many as you do have.
Or they're not our facilities, but how can we support some other facility? But facility is a means to an end, so if we have better facilities, if more people are using those facilities, they will fill the buckets, the strategic priorities, and help us increase leisure education, help us increase active living. So that's how I would use the language we've already crafted here. I'm not saying there's not space for what you've suggested, but that's how we were thinking about it. This is where I'd love to Sharon and Andre, like, does that square with kind of your understanding of the conversations we had at CMRC?
It is, and I guess our Rainbow facility is just part of recreation. We saw recreation as a whole and many more things than sports, for instance. Most sports happen at a facility.
But the question I think you're raising, Alice, is does just facilities on its own, facility development, facility promotion, rise to the level of a strategic priority area? And we can have that conversation, absolutely. So that's the feedback.
Well, whether it's here or whether there's some unknowns to me.
Very good.
Derry.
Oh, the libraries into the mix too.
Well, that's recreation too, yeah.
One of the first arguments I had around this table when I was speaking when I shouldn't have, when I was sitting in Sam's position, having an argument with one of the counselors, which is a dangerous thing to do. Because we were talking about similar things. This particular counselor would not hear that libraries were part of the recreation facilities. And I couldn't bite my tongue any longer, so I made a comment. It stuck with me that I had to make that comment because for me, back when someone sitting around this table didn't feel that library was part of recreation, it blew me away. So I think the facility argument, I'd like to add libraries to the mix.
Yeah. On that note, I'll just throw in, there's a really fantastic article that was written by a retired Nova Scotia recreation professional that was equating, it's just written a couple weeks ago. I was asking the question, like, what are some of our most successful recreation facilities and why? And the example he gave was the new public library downtown Halifax, which is just a mecca for programming, diversity, equity, in some cases, physical activity, arts and culture, like everything is housed in that building. And it's a recreation facility under a different name, absolutely. So I think that is a wonderful example of how recreation, the field of recreation has changed in the last 10 years and it's expanded, and the unusual players, so to speak, are now recreation providers as well. we haven't necessarily thought that way here, that's fine. But if that's the point of this exercise, is to kind of push us to where do we want to think. So I'll leave it at that. But
Terry, you want to make comment and then Andre?
That's fair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention too that the recreation needs assessment is an element of our growth plan, which is a strategic priority of council, so it is important.
I just know, I need, there's information I don't have.
Okay, so like, when I think about our municipality, I mean, every municipality struggles or thinks so deeply on all their priorities and things like that, but what separates us from others? What makes us unique? Well, I think that our municipality is unique, that we have a certain lifestyle. Yeah. It's maybe even the envy of others in our province. And then you can break that down into a couple of components, maybe prosperity would be one. But I think another one is also important. It's this healthy lifestyle, is health. And that can be mental or physical health. And how do we support that? And so you have a number of priorities here. And to Alan's comment about like a facility, I believe that's important, but it's sort of like as Gord said, a means. At this level, what we're talking here, we're talking about the purpose, and the purpose is to support our residents' mental and physical health. So, and that could be sports or skating or sailing, or it could be dance or music or art or a library, any one of those things.
so just to pick up on the lifestyle, this is where we get into what are the priorities, what are the actions, and then how do we operationalize those actions. So here's an operational idea that we've already put into my work plan for this year, which is Engage Nova Scotia published the quality of life survey, right? The results. No one has really done anything with that data, especially for the recreation sector. So what I've proposed for ourselves and at Recreation Nova Scotia is what I want to do is do a deep dive into that data. And then think about what does that data actually mean for the municipality of Chester? Use that exercise as a template for the recreation sector across the province. That's great. But just let's look at that data and get to these kinds of questions like lifestyle, quality of life, and then how do we take it and actually find actions within it as well? Because that's, in my observations, that hasn't been done.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said, Andre. It's just what I'm looking for is outside of what I'm.
Yeah, you want service level analysis, that kind of thing. Who's got what, where, and what do they need? Yeah. Okay. So just to finish the analogy here, and then we can talk a little bit more. So those are the priorities that I went through, and then how do we fill those buckets? So another useful analogy is they're not buckets, they're pots of soup. So there's different ingredients that go into each pot as well, right? So these are the ingredients, the strategic action areas that we'll pull from. So parks, trails, and open spaces, professional development, continual learning. So we as staff don't want to be stagnant. We continue want to learn and improve ourselves. And we can't, if we do stay stagnant, we'll probably have stagnant actions and stagnant priorities as well. Communication, programs, policies, physical support, social supports, facilities is where that shows up on. And then provision. So these are some of the things that we could just provide, do for folks in communities, but also we want to enable them. So that goes back to the independent recreation persons as well. So Chad already touched on some of the next steps here, but we do want to put out and invite feedback from the public just on the direction that we're going here. And then hitting a few key stakeholders that the CMRC representatives identified, I know a few others as well. And then again, to satisfy the MOU that we have with the province that partially funds my position, we need to fine tune this a little bit to get into the details of how physical activity shows up in a little bit more tangible actions from this overall direction that we've chosen for ourselves. And then lastly, again, CMRC, we invite what we said or agreed at that table is we welcome the oversight, so to speak, from that group. So how are you filling the buckets is the question that should be asked at every one of those meetings. And we as staff should always be able to say, we're doing this thing, and this thing that advance that strategic priority area. So that's the overview of where we are now. And any other thoughts, comments, or future directions you'd like us to pursue? Let us know.
I thought that this was quite extensive. I appreciated how you walked us through, and I wasn't aware that you had gone through this, if you will, with your, I was gonna say board, but the recreation committee itself, and so, or our recreation committee. So I look to councillors Church and Vino, of course, on that one, so thank you for that. I especially like the weight for the level of collaboration that's come up through the document quite a bit. And getting to the chart of the helpful, harmful, internal, external, that
SWOT analysis.
Yeah, SWOT analysis. Couple things on the bottom right, in terms of the threats externally, I found interesting community-based affinities and identity. And I certainly know what that means in terms of our different communities, if you will, in terms of working together and reaching out to each other and becoming more MODC or MOC focused. That's how I take from that. So I find that interesting. I'm glad that's included. And I don't like to admit when I don't quite catch on to something, but maybe I'll ask my fellow councillors who are on the rec committee to define and help me through this one. So on the opportunities, potential for open spaces for programming, social connections, earth education, etc. So can you explain to me a little bit more around the earth education, what that might mean? Andre, maybe?
Earth education.
Yeah, I don't quite know what that is.
I think that's getting out into just natural, getting out into the natural environment. You want to say walk in the woods or whatever, you're on a trail.
Well, it's something that Jody does particularly well in our department with, bird identification hikes and medicinal plant walks in our spaces, those kinds of things.
So it's stuff we're doing if we go for walks in the woods, but I just didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Identify magic mushrooms.
It's something we include in our summer staff training as well.
So I did understand that.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's walking with purpose.
Okay.
In the woods.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We all good with it?
Perfect.
My only commentary is, this is gonna be great, that it's nice to review this. I don't think in my time here in 10 years that we really had a hard look at recreation. It sort of just toils away on the side. It'd be nice, like, for example, in council, when we give, we talk about engineering matters, it's, those basics in our community are very easy to understand, roads, transportation, water, sewer, those sorts of issues. The less tangible departments like economic development, for example, we try hard to create objectives for that department and then come back with metrics that help us to understand if we're achieving. And I always felt, with recreation, it was, I think we're getting right, but how right, or if we can improve on that, it's hard to really put your finger on it. This measure of how much we've enriched the lives of our residents. That's a hard one to do, but I feel like, at the end of this, it'd be nice that we could distill it down, that we can come back and this council and future councils can have a way of measuring the enrichment that we're providing to the lives of our residents.
Yeah, we would have a few indicators that so as example, we haven't done a quarterly report for a little while, it's probably too soon. But like we would have some metrics on, for example, our community school use and how many visitors are going there, the number of programs that we're offering, the number for program participants. So that gets at a few of the metrics related to participation, but it doesn't necessarily get deep into some of those exact kind of results that you're talking about. So how satisfied or how much have our programs improved the quality of life of our residents? So those numbers are hard to get at, and so perhaps some of that can come through in that some of the survey work that Gore had mentioned early on that will sometimes get, and again, a lot of times it's still at that level of participation rates, like amount of physical activity time and those types of things, but anyway, we can continue to think
I
about
think it has
that.
to be some sort of feedback system somehow, so that we're getting feedback and respond. And it's hard to, yeah, hard to do it otherwise.
Okay, thank you. We're taking a 10-minute break.